Hello, everybody. Welcome to an extremely early edition of the stream. As I mentioned in the Discord, I've got somewhere to be later this morning, so streaming at the normal time would have robbed you of a bunch of great content. So we're going to stream a little bit early, and we'll go for hopefully quite a while, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. Anyway, before I get into everything, 1 second. I guess I should have warmed up my voice before this. Anyway, before we get into it, I want to remind everyone that Alchemortis is not only available for wishlisting, but the Alchemortis playtest is now live for everybody. So if you want to try the game, you can just click this request access button, and what that will do is that will put the game in your Steam library, and you can try it. And you could try it for 6 more days. So February 13th is when the playtest will end. So you've got plenty of time. But join the Discord and leave me your feedback if you are so inclined. And yeah, that's basically it. And thank you to everyone who has played and who has dropped their feedback. I know I saw your wall of text, Ninja Link. So that was extremely helpful for sure, and got a lot of ideas of how to approach a lot of the problems that you brought up. So yeah, it's incredibly helpful, and I very much appreciate that. And it's just really, really fun to see all of you guys enjoying the game, even with its flaws. It's very, very gratifying, so thank you for that. And you could also support the game on Patreon. Check out the perks. This tier here will get you a full version of Alchemortis at launch, so you won't have to buy it on Steam, and you will get your name in the Alchemortis credits. And you could also check out my Udemy courses if you are interested in learning how to build complete games in the Godot engine. All right, so that should be good for the ads. Everything is in the description below. All right, so let me say hello to everybody. Hello, Emerson. Hello, Emerson from the other side. Hello, Ninja Link. Good morning to you all. Hello, Omi or Ami. Welcome, welcome. Bubblegum Lord, good to see you. Welcome, everybody. Gonna be a probably smaller viewership today because this is not the usual time. But so I did a bunch of stuff yesterday. I fixed the Mac OS version of the game crashing. What that ended up being, that crash, is that Mac has to lock down their apps. So what Godot does is in the export settings, there is a code sign mode here, which is built in by default. And the code sign is basically just a security measure that Apple essentially requires. It's very hard for a normal person to run an app that has not been properly code signed on a Mac system. So Godot does that code signing for you. However, the problem is I have an add-on for Godot Steam bindings. And this Godot Steam, these C# bindings, they have the DLLs, the DY libs, the kind of Steam dynamic libraries that need to be copied over into the build of the game. And that step, at least from what I saw, as far as I understand it, that step happened after Godot did its code signing. And so that means that the package that was signed had its contents modified, and that was being blocked by basically security policy on Apple systems. So fortunately, what I ended up doing to fix that Mac crash is I went to my export settings here, and I just disabled code signing. And the reason that it works is because Steam signs builds for you. It signs Windows and Mac builds for you. And since I'm distributing only through Steam, I don't have to go through this whole code sign rigmarole in my build step. I can just upload an unsigned build to Steam, and Steam will handle that. And so I completely sidestepped that issue because obviously these dynamic libraries for Steam are being copied into the package after Godot builds the game, but before it gets uploaded to Steam. So when Steam receives the build, everything that's going to be in the final build is already in the build, and so it gets signed and then it works. So anyway, I just disabled code signing to fix the Mac issue, and that worked. And then the Linux bug was an interesting one. So the Linux double-click bug, basically when you go to the card inspector and you double-click really quick, if it would load, you go to the card inspector, you double-click really quick, and it would bring up two card inspector UIs. The reason that was happening is because I guess the input processing is different on Linux versus Windows. If I were to click this without moving my mouse, it would not register a mouse exit signal, even though this screen dimmer that's appearing over top of the cards is blocking the mouse. So in other words, it never detected that the mouse was leaving that card, and you were able to click it again. Now, the interesting thing is that that was only available for like a half a second or a 3/4 of a second window. For some reason, if you just left your mouse there and waited like a half a second, then it would fire a mouse event that detected that the mouse had exited. So that was really strange. But the fix for that is basically just to pipe a fake input mouse motion through the tree at the position that the mouse is currently at, and that updates all of the mouse enter, mouse exit states of all the control nodes at that mouse position. So like this dimmer rect here, or no, this margin container here, this is supposed to stop mouse events. So when this card inspector renders over top of everything, it stops mouse events. But for some reason, Linux just wasn't updating the mouse state. So yeah, what I did is when this card inspector gets added to the tree on ready, I already have this method to propagate mouse motion. This was used for my clickable controls, if you remember. In here, propagate mouse motion. So basically, I just call this, and what this does is this just constructs a mouse motion event at the current mouse position, and then it just sends that through the viewport. And then that input gets handled as if it was an input that actually came from your mouse. So I'm basically just saying, hey, put a mouse motion event that doesn't change the mouse position at all, or doesn't reflect a mouse position change, but just force anything that relies on mouse motion events to update, which includes the mouse enter, mouse exit signals. So yeah, that's how I fixed that, and it took me like 4 hours to even get set up to test that, because I was installing Linux, I installed Zorin OS, I had a bunch of secure boot issues that were preventing it from working. It didn't recognize my Ethernet, so I had to use my built-in Wi-Fi. And then once I finally got it to Zorin, my display was glitchy AF. I installed the wrong NVIDIA driver at the first time. Then I had to go into recovery mode and purge all the NVIDIA drivers and do it over again. And then once I had that all fixed, I had to install Godot, C#, VS Code, get all of that set up so I could actually run the game from the Godot editor. And then I was able to reproduce the issue, and then it ended up being a one-line fix. So there you go. Don't let anyone tell you that I'm not dedicated to fixing bugs in this game. I will not tolerate such slander. Anyway. Hello, Chris. Hello, Wooius. Any welcome back. Good to see you again. Good to see you. How have you been? The playtest is supposed to prevent you from continuing if it hit a 100 alert and beat the boss. It wasn't clear if that was intended behavior or a bug. If you're in the 3rd region, yes, that's the end. So if you hit 100 in a 3rd region, that's the end of the game. But if that's happening prior to being in the last region of the map, then that would be a problem. Yeah. Hello, Joy. Welcome. Yeah, I found Bazite the easiest to install NVIDIA's drivers built in. Well, I think that my driver problem is actually a problem with a lot of Linux distributions because I have a 5080, and I guess for some reason those newest cards or drivers or whatever are a problem. I also had driver issues with my Ethernet cable because I'm on a newer Intel chipset, and I guess the drivers didn't work, at least at the installer. Once I was actually in and I upgraded everything, it worked. So anyway, but I'm also a Linux noob, so it's possible that I just like created a ton of work for myself that didn't need to be done. If I had only known this one esoteric command, I would have gotten it done in 15 minutes. But anyway, ChatGPT helped me through it, so quite a journey, yeah. Well, so here's the thing. I've got a 128 gigabyte partition on my drive now that just has Zorin installed with all of my tooling installed as well. So if there's ever a Linux specific bug again, I could just pop over to that, pull the latest, you know, from GitHub, and then just go ahead and fix it. Busy, very busy. Busy in a good way or busy in a bad way? Anyway, I'm glad you're back. It's always good to see you. I think it happened earlier, but not 100% sure. Okay. Well, let me know if it happens again. I would appreciate that. Hello, Llama Toast. Welcome. Or I am a toast. Is that an L at the front or is that as an I? Can't tell with these fonts sometimes. Dual boot. Yeah, it's dual boot. So it's on the same drive. I just, you know, when the BIOS boots up. Llama, gotcha. Okay. When the BIOS boots up, just hit F11 and choose whatever else. It doesn't prompt me for dual boot by default. It boots into Windows by default, but I can switch into Zorin. No problem. Hello, Edo Makes Games. Welcome, welcome. Good to see you. Do you have any tools to help learn GDScript? I'm having trouble. I think GD Quest has a very good interactive, like gamified GDScript tutorial or game or tool. I don't know what to call it, but look at GD Quest and you will find that I think their beginner tutorials are like some of the best that you'll find. So definitely check that out. Okay, anyway, let's do something fun. Check this out. Boom, Witch Hut. So we're gonna get the Witch Hut into the game. It's a 2x2 card, and it's just like a little... I've talked about like I want to get more into creating cards that are more like scenes rather than objects. And so this is part of that effort. So we've got a Witch Hut, and this will do something. I don't know. So cute. Yeah, I was having fun drawing it last night. Originally, I was going to put vines all going around this thing, but that ended up being too noisy. So it's just a little stone hut with a thatched roof, tree, and then a little planter outside. And there we go. Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, I'm really happy with how it turned out. It took me like an hour and a half to draw last night, but there you go. So anyway, we got to figure out what abilities to do with this, and also I want to redo the dowsing rod ability. We're going to need flavor text for the Witch Hut, but we also need an ability. It looks amazing. Thank you, Edo Makes Games. Thank you, thank you. One thing to keep in mind with dual booting is that if you install on the same drive, the BIOS settings and bootloader are in the same place and can cause bugs. Interesting. Well, I haven't encountered any bugs yet, but I'll keep that in mind. Do you have any tips for learning pixel art? I have a pixel art tips video on this channel, actually. Well, sorry, you're on Twitch. So if you go to my YouTube channel, which I may not have linked on Twitch. Oops. Do I have my YouTube channel linked on Twitch? Let's see. Oh yeah, it is. It's in the About section. So if you go to my YouTube channel, you'll find a video, how to get good at pixel art with no skill. And that video contains the 5 most impactful tips that I learned when doing pixel art that made an immediate and obvious improvement in the quality of my art. So definitely check that out if you're interested. Looks sick, thank you. All right, so let's figure out what kind of ability this should have. I also want to do one other thing. I'm kind of bouncing around all over the place, but... is there a different flag? Debug. Editor runtime. Is this it? Add. Is that going to disable verbose logging? No. I also have this error that started showing up, which has never shown up before. And I don't know how to fix it. I mean, it's not an error, it's a warning, but I don't like my debugger being filled with 45 warnings on startup every time. I mean, we could just turn debug off, I guess, but let's see. I wonder if there's another flag that tells me like whether I'm running it from the editor. I wonder if there's a, let me take a look real quick. I don't know if there's like documentation. Oh, here we go. Here's all the default feature tags. Running an editor build, and inside the editor. So I guess editor would be the one that I use. So if we do editor, add, turn it off. Nope, that did not work. I guess I could just, I could just turn off debug here, but that's all right. STD out, so that's not it. Editor hint, running on an editor build and running the project. I don't know what this means. Editor runtime? I mean, that's the last one to try, really. Did I try that first? Let's see. Okay, that's not working. All right. Well, no need to get stuck on that. Let's just turn that off there. Alrighty. So, let's go to the witch hut now, and we're going to have to put some things in place. So we need a tag for this. Ah, interesting. What tags are we going to put on this? None of these tags really fit that well. I mean, ritual is probably the closest result, closest fit. Potentially relic, but probably just ritual. That's probably fine. Let's give it a turn cooldown of 14. Dimensions is 2x2. Witch hut. That's probably fine. You are welcome. You are welcome. Hello, Real Prime City. Did you do everything yourself during development, or did you outsource anything like music? I did like 95% of stuff myself, maybe more, but yeah, I hired somebody for the music. And the sound effects, I'm not creating the sound effects myself. I have a sound effects library, but in terms of like combining the sound effects and mixing them and putting them into the game, that's all me too. So with the exception of my sound effects library and the music that I hired somebody to do, everything else is, yeah, myself. Ritual, yeah. Now we need an old hag. Well, that's what I was looking at my cards. I have a hag card written down, but then I was like, oh, it'd be fun to make like a witch hut. So that's what I did last night. Anyway, we need a ability for this. So what kind of ability should we do here? What kind of ability should we do? I should probably update the card inspection tool as well. I was very lucky because I commented on Random Composer's video that his music is amazing, and he offered to do music for my game for free. Awesome. That's awesome. All right, let's take a look at just ally cards for now. Just trying to look at these and get some ideas maybe for what the Witch Hut could do. We don't have a lot of cards that project to other cards. Look at how cute the Witch Hut is. Yeah, actually, there's not a whole lot of player cards that do projection. So maybe there's an opportunity for the Witch Hut to project things. Yeah, I actually don't really have... I mean, I have project to adjacent cards heal, and then the imp projects to adjacent cards fire. Is that the only... Is that the only projection? The only player projections in the game? This projects to enemy. Oh, we have the Banshee head, right? So we've got three cards that do projection. I need to update this tool so I can filter by ability. Okay, so maybe we'll do a projection ability of some sort. I should probably disable dragging on these cards. Anyway. Your art style is very unique. Thank you, Llama Toast. Yeah, that wasn't intentional. It's just kind of fell into that with just experimenting and learning. Project to allied ritual cards, hex one enemy minion for 3 turns. Probably should be position based, but you get it. Yeah, there's not a whole lot of hexing, so maybe we could do that. Hex is only on one thing, I think. Hex debuff. Let's do this, actually. Let's do, minions. Yeah, I think we could do something like, let's see, project hex. How do I actually do that? How do I actually do that? Let me see if I can do this without looking at my other abilities. So we need a query target provider. New query target provider. Query target provider dot query options dot directions is equal to board inventory component dot query directions dot edges. Query target provider dot query options dot card tag projects to allied ritual cards, hex one enemy minion. Yeah, do we want to do ritual or do we want to do... Maybe I'll just do... Maybe I'll just try all cards. So we'll do that. We need the Hex. Let me see how the ability projector works. No, not this. Ability builder dot ability projector. Project ability. Composed ability. Var hex composed ability is equal to new composed ability. Buff applicator is equal to new buff applicator. Var enemy minion query is equal to new query target provider. Entire board. Enemy minion query dot query options dot query source board is equal to false. Enemy minion query dot query options dot query target board is equal to true. Enemy minion query dot query options dot limit is equal to 1. Okay, so new buff applicator hex debuff, enemy minion query, initial base magnitude. Oh, I could just do 1 here. Magnitude, new hex debuff, magnitude. Apply deferred, that doesn't need to be deferred. Return abilities, enemy minion query, buff applicator. We don't care about any of this. Okay, so var hex projector is equal to ability builder dot project ability, hex composed ability, configure. I guess I would just take this query target provider, and we will do query target provider, or no, yeah, query target provider query directions is equal to edges. We don't need this one now. Okay, so I think I could just put the hex projector in here. Description func hex projector dot get description, I think. Let's see if that works. What's your game? It's called, are you talking to me or Ito? My game is Alcabornis, it's linked below. Second ability could be to paralyze one enemy ritual card for 3 turns. Let's see. Projects to allied cards on the edge of the board. That didn't work. Okay. Okay, yeah, I figured, yeah. I figured you were asking, Ito. Why is this hex projector not working? Hex composed ability. Oh, do I need I need a description in here, that's why. Oh, custom filter. Oh, I see. I need to do all this stuff too. Okay. So actually, maybe I should take this and put this in my ability builder. Since the hex is basically going to be the same every time. So let's do public static composed ability hex. And then we just return this. Okay, so now I can go to my voodoo doll and I could just do this ability builder dot hex. Get rid of this. And now I can share that hex creation code everywhere. So actually I could just do this ability builder dot hex. And I could get rid of this. So I didn't need to reconstruct that. Okay. Let's see what that does. Projects two allied cards on the edge of the board. Hex one random enemy card that deals damage. Okay. That seems to be working. Your color palette is crazy cool. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I didn't make it. I found it on low spec, but you know, maybe someday I'll be able to make my own palettes, but I think I'm making good use of this one. Did a handful of runs on the playtest last night, and man, poison gets strong crazy fast. Nice. How are you liking it, Jeremy? And welcome back to the stream. Okay, so the Witch Hut has the hex projector now. Actually, do I need to do all this stuff? I think this is redundant as well. There we go. I made that way more complicated than it needed to be. Nice. Cool. All right, so that should work. And then we need to give this one other ability too. Paralyze ritual cards. I guess that's an interesting one. What else do we have available? What else do we have available? Ally. We could do something. We could do something based on alchemized cards, maybe. I've never introduced an ability that scales based off of alchemized cards. Hello, Kusei. Welcome, welcome. Good to see you again. Do I want to do something based on whether the card is alchemized or not? I really need to be able to filter by ability type. I wonder if I should do that. Maybe we'll work on that this stream. I kind of wanted to get going on like maybe like a meta progression system. Maybe we'll still have time for that after working on the tool, but I need to start laying the groundwork for the meta progression. It'd be interesting, but now that everything is probably going to be alchemized, I'm not sure that would be limiting or not. Yeah, that's true. Maybe we can make it do the opposite, scale based off of non-alchemized cards. Hello, Shizzle, my chisel. Welcome. How you doing? Maybe we can make it scale based off non-alchemized cards instead. Interesting. Maybe we could do that. What do we want to make it do, though? I really enjoy it. The one thing I kept doing was when there was a reward screen, I was to use right-clicking to auto-move items over. Used to right-clicking to auto-move items over. My force of habit was then to drag and drop some of the new items to the board, but in the middle of dragging it, it would always exit scene back to path choice. Oh, right. Yeah, so you quick move, and as soon as you quick move, it automatically leaves. Yeah. I have to figure out a good way of doing that. I mean, one option is just to add a button or something that says continue on so you can like do whatever you're doing. I'm trying not to make it like, because here's the thing, right? If you're going to be clicking through the game a lot, I don't want to put clicks where they're unnecessary because that would add a lot of friction to just playing the game. So I've been kind of hesitant to like add a click to continue button, but I don't know if there's a good way to solve the exit to map problem. I mean, maybe one way to do it is auto transition to the map, but if you're like actively dragging a card, then don't automatically close the inventory. That might be the way to do it. So if you're dragging a card, it will still transition to the map in the background, but it won't close your inventory while you're dragging a card. The problem there is that, let's say that you just visited an obelisk node or whatever, right? You may miss the map transformation animation if your inventory is still up. Like you will miss like which nodes actually got changed, which would be a problem as well. So I mean, there's going to be a way to fix it. I just have to think about it some more. Played the playtest for almost 2 hours last night. Very fun. Awesome. Thank you, Coral. Yeah, I'm very happy. Like, I know the game is a little bit rough. I know there's some quality of life missing, and of course, like, there's a lot more content, and, you know, there's some balancing issues. But the fact that a lot of you are playing the playtest with its limited content and in its rougher state, is very, very cool. So I very much appreciate that. And that tells me that the game is fun, and I just gotta iron out these problems, and then it will be really good. So we'll see. Again, can't drop the ball, right? Can't drop the ball. Let's maybe just do heal per raw card. New composed ability. We need a query target provider. Equal to new query target provider. Query target provider dot query options dot query directions board inventory component dot query directions dot entire board. Query target provider dot custom dot query options dot custom filter. Card not card dot is card dot is, do I not have, oh, is alchemized. Okay. Var dynamic heal is equal to new dynamic magnitude ability. Query target provider, new heal 0. I need a value scaler actually here. Var value scaler is equal to new value scaler, query target provider, value scaler dot set multiplier, const int base multiplier is equal to 3. Okay, and then we're going to put the value scaler in here. Return new ability configuration. Abilities is equal to query target provider, dynamic heal, scaling func is equal to tier, var ability scaler is equal to new, no, ability scalars dot get heal scaler, var new multiplier is equal to ability scalar base multiplier tier, value scalar dot set multiplier new multiplier, description func is equal to heal get multiplier per non-alchemized allied card. Then we'll put the heal per raw card there. Okay. So let's go to project settings. We're going to do test player cards. Witch Hut. Probably need to get rid of some of this. Well, maybe that will work actually. I think you should also add a quick sell button. I've had a stash full of 1x1 cards and selling them was a chore. Yeah, I could do that. Rougher meaning sans the meta progression and stuff. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of polish missing. There's a lot of quality of life missing. There's some balance issues. There's some pacing issues. I'm not totally happy with like how the map mechanics work. I think that there's something missing there. Oh, that didn't work. Let's get rid of the zombie. A couple of things I noticed. Sound options didn't persist between restarts. If I'm in the inventory at the end of a fight to make space, the item stays floating when it moves to the map. Okay. Yeah, so are you saying like when you close the game and reopen it? Yeah, there's nothing is being persisted to the disk right now. So there's no settings that get saved to the disk. There's obviously no save data. It's basically just like you're starting the game brand new every time you start. So, yeah, that'll come next though. IDKY gravitate towards poison builders probably because they're strong. Yeah, that's accurate, Jeremy. That's accurate. I didn't want to do any save data persisting at all until I've got like, till I'm pretty much more or less set. What's the word? More or less set on like what actually is going to be saved and whatnot. Also found it unintuitive to have to right click the shop instead of left. Yeah, I mean, the problem there is that because you can inspect cards in the shop, so left clicking inspects a card. If I made left click to purchase when you're trying to inspect, that would be not ideal. But somebody said that the controls are reversed, that usually like left click is quick move for card games like this. I don't know. I think left clicking, I mean, right click to inspect does make sense, but left clicking to quick move doesn't really make that much sense to me. But maybe I'm wrong. Okay, let's go to a combat and see what's up. Can make a menu option to invert it. Yeah, I could. Well, maybe not. Because the whether it's on left click or right click is going to have to change all kinds of state code that I have. I mean, maybe it would be fine. But yeah, somebody just in the Discord said that. Let's see. Yes. So yeah, typically left click manipulates and right click inspects. But that, I don't think, I mean, I've never played Hearthstone. I mean, I have, but I don't remember it. But is left click usually quick move? I mean, left click does manipulate, right? So like you can move things around, but does it usually just like quick move if you just click it? I don't know. Anyway, let's see if this works. I didn't notice a hex. Hold on a second. Is this applying hex? Hex one random enemy card that deals damage. Why am I not seeing the hex? Oh, here we go. Damage is converted to self-damage. Villager dealt 6 damage to self. Okay, it is working. Maybe let's see. Chicken dealt 2 damage to self. Okay, that makes sense. I think it's working. And then this should also be healing. Which hot healed 9. Right, yeah, okay. Cool. I know others have mentioned this before, but I feel like obtaining any decent amount of alchemical residue is a chore. I feel like some runs, I was just using the pot random items to get one more slot open. Yeah, so the alchemical residue is like a brand new feature compared to the last playtest. So I was expecting it to be a little bit rough because it's the first iteration. So yeah, I think one of the main problems with it is something that Ninja Link has pointed out and others, which is that you don't really want to use large cards because they give you a ton of alchemical residue. And you also don't want to, like sometimes if you just want alchemical residue, you just have to do alchemy a bunch of times. So I think that can be solved with more sources of alchemical residue for sure. But I think I need to... Yeah, I think I need to change how you gain alchemical residue from alchemy. So yeah, I gotta think about that. Because I want you to be rewarded with alchemical residue based on how many cards you use, but maybe I just make it a flat 2 alchemical residue for every card that you don't use. So that way the small cards are on a level playing field with large cards, and that may actually put more pressure on using large cards, because then if you sacrifice more small cards, you'll get more residue, right? So that might just balance it out. If I just made it like a flat 2 alchemical residue every time, that might fix it, but then, you know, it still doesn't fix the problem that it can be a chore if you're just trying to unlock board spaces. So yeah, we'll have to think about that, but it's the first iteration, so I was expecting it not to be perfect. I think it's good. I think, yeah, I just gotta figure, and the other problem with alchemical residue, it's only used for like one thing. It's only used for unlocking board spaces. So if I could find multiple uses for this, I think that would be better as well, but we'll see. Be a big UI change, but you could have the tooltip slide in from the left. and move the whole inventory over, then it also wouldn't be overlapping the shop or cauldron on those screens. The problem with that is that it could overlap your player board here. And like the card inspector, yeah, the only things that it has on it that you can't get from the tooltip is it has the tags, the flavor text, and then like the descriptions of like what everything is. So yeah, I don't know. We gotta fix some things. Felt like when the artifact to swap currency with residue appeared, it was almost needed to be picked up than anything else at times. Actually, at the moment, the tooltip covers the enemy area too, so if you want to view all the cards, you have to juggle the mouse around. Yeah, I mean, you can hover over them though, right? Yeah, I guess, yeah. Maybe there's something to do there. Hello, Ninjax, welcome. Want to say thank you for the Udemy course, it helped a lot. Yeah, you're welcome. Glad you enjoyed it. And welcome to the stream. Something I forgot to mention in my feedback is the skip reward of obelisk enhanced spaces. I ran into the scenario even though where I couldn't or didn't want to upgrade or enchant cards. Sadly, the skip of these powered spaces is the same as normal. Oh yeah, that's a good point. Maybe you could give residue and growth board node, or make an obelisk power, grow board and gain residue based on new cells. Yeah, that could work. That could work. Artifact idea, cauldron scrubber. Increases alchemical residue per alchemy. Basically, you scrub the cauldron really hard for some extra residue. Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, like some artifact that increases the residue that you gain would be good, for sure. I was also going to introduce a reagent that, when you alchemize the reagent, it just gives you a ton of alchemical residue for some reason. Anyway, I'm liking how the witch hut is working. So we'll call that good for now. Maybe we'll add another ability to it at some point in the future, but you can disable the tooltip using the little I button too. Yes, yeah, you can. Okay. So before we go on to anything more major, I do want to redo the dowsing rod ability because I changed the alchemy now that the crit chances are not randomized. So the dowsing rod is basically completely ineffective right now. So I'm going to change this. I'm just going to basically move its crit chance and crit modifier over to an actual explicit ability. And then that ability can be alchemized onto things. So yeah, we'll do that. Anyway, give me a 3-minute break. I'll be right back and we will continue on with the dowsing rod. And then maybe we can spend some time starting to lay the groundwork for the meta progression system, because that's the big system that I need to address next. So yeah, we're kind of going to enter a phase development here where I'm just going to throw a bunch of stuff in the game very roughly. And then we're going to have to go through the process of iterating and fine tuning that. So I think that's the best way, at least that I've found, to approach making games. Like, you don't need to get the systems perfect initially. You just need to get something in the game, something working, even if the code is bad, even if the UI is bad. And then once you have something to work with, it's a lot easier to refine and mold it into what serves the game best. So we're just going to paint with broad brush strokes here, just get something working, and then we'll refine as necessary. But anyway, I'll be right back in 3 minutes and we'll continue on. All right, I'm back. It'd be really cool to still have a card in the game that was just empty. Being able to isolate abilities from larger cards would still helpful in reducing RNG, and I think that would still have a place in the new alchemy system. Oh, well, actually, maybe the dowsing rod, I think I was thinking about it wrong, actually. Maybe the dowsing rod is not actually useless. I was thinking only one direction. I was thinking, oh, you take the dowsing rod's crit chance and put it on something else, but maybe the dowsing rod can just stay the way that it is because it has that 50% crit chance with no abilities. But if I put it with the witch hut here, projects, well, that doesn't, that ability can't crit, but I still have the dowsing rod here. So I get rid of that, and then I can put, like, you know, damage on it or whatever. Yeah. So now I've got a dowsing rod with 50% crit chance with 4 damage. Maybe, okay, maybe we just keep the dowsing rod the way it is, right? I was only thinking about it from one direction, like, I gotta update the dowsing rod so that you can take its stats and put it on something else, but the dowsing rod can just be sort of like a receptacle for other abilities, you know? And that kind of brings me to another interesting thing. I would love to have reagents that can, like, absorb stats, and then you can reapply those reagents in the future. So imagine you had a reagent that you put in with the dowsing rod that absorbs whatever the crit chance is of the item currently. And then so you take that, you put the reagent there, it absorbs that crit chance, and then you can slap it onto something else, right? That would be really cool. So do I have that written down? I have no idea. My board is getting a little bit out of control here. I think I need to create separate lanes for all these separate things, but reagent that absorbs stat and can be reapplied and can have that stat reapplied to another card. And then let's do a reagent that absorbs abilities and can be reapplied to other cards. Maybe that one's not as necessary because you could still use normal cards for that purpose, but that would be cool. Anyway, gotta head out. Have a great stream. Thank you, Ninja Link. And thanks again for the detailed feedback in the Discord. Very much appreciate that. I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you on Monday, I hope. Hello, Clickertail. Welcome back. Always good to see you. Welcome, welcome. So I guess let's just not take any action on the dowsing rod for now then. I think the dowsing rod still works just fine. It's got a 50% crit chance, so yeah, it's just a little bit different. Alrighty. Well, I need to do flavor text and flavor text for these things. Okay. Maybe we could get those out of the way real quick while we're on stream. Elf in a jar. Let's do this. Elves. Elves are mischievous and tend to stay out of sight. However, a proper ritual can draw them out in masses, making them easy to collect, and tend to remain out of sight. However, a proper ritual can drop them out in masses, making them easy to collect. Okay, we'll do that. And then the witch hut. Oh, I forgot to outline this. I need to outline that too. Let me do that really quick. This is going to be a little bit tricky. Maybe not. Maybe not. So we can outline this. Hopefully that doesn't... Oh. Hopefully that doesn't change anything substantially. No, that's fine. Now we've got the hut here. Let's take this. Okay. So we've got that, and then we've got this, which is already outlined. Okay. And I also updated the art. I forgot to re-export it. So that was not actually the final art for that witch hut. There we go. Okay. It's always good to see you as well. Thank you, Clickertail. I think absorb abilities is also a good idea. Sometimes you have a good card with bad tags, like with Gorgon Head. You can transfer abilities to other empty ritual card and make board stronger. Okay. Yeah, we can do that. Definitely want to lean more into the reagent side of things and give you lots and lots and lots of tools to do basically whatever you want to do. What do I want to say for the witch hut here? What do I want to say for the witch hut? Even, okay, so witches tend to be ostracized even in occult circles. Their counsel is sometimes sought. Their counsel is sometimes sought. Intrepid adventurers. Witches tend to be ostracized even in occult circles. Their counsel is sometimes sought by intrepid adventurers. Maybe we'll change this from sometimes to often. Okay, that'll work. Hello, Xynoblide. Welcome. When did you decide to come to Twitch? Just this week, I think. Was it last week or this week? I think it was this week. I'm streaming on YouTube too. I just have a multi-stream going, so streaming to Twitch at the same time as YouTube. So I'm trying to make everyone happy, you know? But I think a lot of people prefer the Twitch experience to YouTube. So just making that possible for everyone who wants that to be possible. Okay, add flavor text and update witch hut art. Alrighty. Very cool, very cool. Very tight, very tight. That's done. That's done. This is all done, so that I can move that over. All right. Do I want to keep this card? I guess it doesn't matter. All right, let's start working on a framework for meta progression. So there's a question of like, what exactly do I want to do? So I want to do goal. So for the meta progression system, I want to do goal-based unlocks. I really don't. I don't want to do the typical roguelite thing of like, oh, you earn a currency when you do a run and like you have to just like gain a bunch of currency. Like I want to set up specific goals that are tied to unlocks. I think that would be better. Because then it becomes less about just like grinding out the game to get all the unlocks and more about actually explicitly changing your approach to every run in an attempt to unlock things. I think that's much more interesting. So let's do goal-based unlocks. So we want to do gold-based unlocks tied to like number of victories, certain damage types dealt. Goal-based unlocks tied to number of victories, certain damage types dealt, certain cards used. Okay, and then what do we want to unlock? Unlock characters. And we also want to unlock cards or card packs. So the idea is that when you first start playing the game, you'll start with a limited number of cards, but then as you unlock things, new cards will be added to the pool of possible cards that you can use. And that should hopefully keep the game feeling fresh as you do things. So I could have like thematic card packs, which contain like 4 or 5 cards, and those 4 or 5 cards get added to the pool of possible cards. So what I'm going to need to set up from a technical standpoint is I'm going to need to track statistics permanently across runs. Trigger unlocks when statistics change. Trigger unlocks when statistics change. Allow defining card packs and which cards belong to those packs. What else do I need to do? I need to modify the in-game loot tables to only include cards which have been unlocked. We might want to do the same for like artifacts, right? So unlock artifacts. Okay, so like those are the basic, like these are the high level goals, and then these are the technical things that are going to be needed to support those goals. But then we want to talk about like user experience, right? So we're going to need like an encyclopedia. I'm going to use a fancy word, a diegetic encyclopedia. Diegetic just means it's not a typical UI display. So I'm trying not to do like too much traditional UI in this game with like, oh, here's a menu and here's buttons and like there's a scroll, you know. Obviously that has to happen sometimes, but I'm trying to do like interactive art for everything. So we want to do like a diegetic encyclopedia that contains unlocked and unlockable items, segmented by card, artifact, etc., character. We need some kind of alert / notification of unlocked items. That will be dismissed upon inspecting in the encyclopedia. I'm just using the word encyclopedia. That might not be what it's called, but that's all right. So the UX things, those can be figured out last. The most important thing is to figure out the data structures that are going to represent these things. I think maybe the thing to start with is I need a way of tracking statistics. And I basically just want to track as much data as possible across runs. And trying to figure out how exactly I want to do that. Obviously, I could just create a giant statistics object and put that all in, but do I want to track all the statistics for a run and then do I want to track all the statistics for a run and then like store all of those entries separately in like a giant JSON? I mean, that might get to be quite a lot if a player does like 5,000 runs. So that's one approach, is just to store the statistics for each run and then sum all of those statistics up across the whole list of runs. The other option is just to stuff it into a giant statistics object. It might be cool to have like a round history that you can look at, but and then triggering unlocks when statistics change. That's gonna be another big thing to do. Very cool, yeah. Unlock map events. No permanent upgrade for max health, right? I don't think it would work since we have multiple characters now. Yeah, I don't think I want to do like permanent upgrades that are related to like how much blood you start with or how much health you start with. Because like this is not going to be... I don't want this to be like a traditional roguelike where it's basically impossible to beat the game until you get some of like the permanent upgrades. That always kind of annoyed me in roguelike games. Because then it's just like, I don't know. Setting up a guaranteed failure condition that you can't get over until you've like upgraded a little bit is just kind of like, I think that's kind of weird, isn't it? Like if you're presenting me a game and I have a run, I should in theory be able to beat it without being like an esports player, you know what I mean? Like it might be hard, but I find that a lot of roguelites are kind of like in the camp of it's basically impossible to beat it unless you get some unlocks. The other thing that I'm going to probably want to do is unlocks tied to playing on harder difficulties. Yeah, it is weird, yeah. Yeah, I never really liked that. I mean, I kind of like roll my eyes a little bit when it's like, oh, I died to the first boss because I have half as much health as I should have and I'm dealing 50% less damage than I should. Now I just have to grind a bunch of times until I get the currency to upgrade. You want something similar to He Is Coming? I played that game for like 10 minutes. I need to play that game more. Like Hades 2, technically it's possible to win a round in the first try, but for the average gamer it's impossible. Yeah, that's actually the game that came to mind is Hades. That's the reason I don't really like Hades that much, is because I just felt like I just had to throw myself against a brick wall just to generate the currency to upgrade my stuff, and I was like, I bounced off of that game pretty quick because I was like, I don't want to do this. Like I want a challenge, and I'm not opposed to making the challenge a little bit easier with upgrades, but making it outright impossible, like balancing the entire game around requiring upgrades is like, I don't like that. I don't like that at all. Funnily enough, you know, Dark Souls mentioned, but I think Dark Souls, Elden Ring, those kind of games do that really well, where like, you can definitely beat some of the first bosses with just like bare bones equipment, right? Because it's a matter of refining your skill and not just about, oh well, you didn't have the proper upgrades, so you can't win. Anyway, so I think the place to start here is to set up a system where I could track statistics, because the statistics are going to be the thing that kind of like ties everything together. So if I'm doing goal-based unlocks, then I obviously need to be able to track the goals, right? So this is going to be a little bit tricky. And the other thing is this all needs to be serializable. The game that I'm working on only has like 2 upgrades in it, and it's the game, and to the game it doesn't even matter since the game is infinite. Interesting. Okay, that's cool. I think it's really thrilling to see you get further and further into the run the more you upgrade. It also makes the stakes of losing higher. Oh, interesting. Okay. He is coming as far as I know. You always start with the same items, but unlock pools as you play more and more. Yeah, that's okay. So that's kind of the approach that I'm going to take here. So the goal is, with repeated plays, the game shouldn't necessarily become easier in the sense that like the raw stats are different. The game should become easier in the sense that there's more tools available to you. So you're not as confined to what you start the game with, right? So if I start the game and there's only 50 cards in the pool, right, to start, but there's 400 total cards in the game, let's say. So I play one run and it's like, hey, you finished your first run. Here's 10 more cards, right? And oh, you won your first encounter. Here's 10 more cards. You applied 1,000 poison damage. Here's 15 more cards, right? Stuff like that. And so as you play, I think that's going to improve replayability as well, because as you play, you're going to be constantly seeing new things. Like every run, there's going to be something new presented to you. And I think that's the goal. Probably the high level goal is I want the player to have a high likelihood of at least unlocking something when they go into a run. So I don't want to make it super grindy either. So rather than having a few unlockables and making it really grindy, I want to have many unlockables that are all individually easy to accomplish, right? So that way you're constantly getting new stuff. It might be 1 or 2 runs and then you get a brand new thing. You get a character or you get cards or whatever, or artifacts. Maybe you unlock multiple things at once because you accomplished multiple goals during a single run. And then communicating that to the player ahead of time, like what it requires to unlock this item, means that the player can go in with a plan to do that stuff. So I think that's going to be the way to do it. You should play it then. Yeah, I should. So like Slay the Spire. I played a lot of Slay the Spire, but I don't remember how the unlocks there work. Do you currently have cards being randomly pulled, or does your current inventory board influence the cards appearing? No, the cards are always randomly pulled. So the problem with dynamically changing what is made available to you based on like what your current build is number one, that's just really hard to determine from a technical standpoint. Like I could scan the board for all the poison cards that exist and then modify, something to drop poison. But then what happens if I've got like an artifact that converts poison to healing, right? Or, there's like a whole chain of things that could be applied to modify the poison. And I guess it's possible that in a certain way, you could get to the point where like you actually don't want any poison anymore. But if your cards are at base poison, but they're all being changed in a bunch of ways, it may be the case that I don't actually want more poison in my build. Like maybe I'm doing a fire build where poison is converted to fire, and I'd rather have fire instead of poison, right? I don't know, stuff like that. So that's one problem with it, is just like it's hard to tell from a technical standpoint like what the player's going for. And a lot of abilities in the game don't neatly fit into like a certain pattern, right? So like you could imagine like the witch hut that I just did that applies hex on the edge of the board. It's like, well, in that case, I just want more cards, right? It projects a hex debuff to all allied cards on the edge of the board. So that's not really, I may just want cards. I might just want a card with a low turn cooldown, so it's like constantly executing, right? I don't necessarily want the loot table to be biased in favor of like what the game thinks I'm going after. So that's one challenge. And then the other challenge too is that I'm supporting seeded runs. So the idea is that players will be able to share their seeds with other players and play have the exact same experience. And if I'm dynamically changing the combat difficulty, or if I'm dynamically changing what happens with the loot tables based on your build, then that kind of like undercuts the entire purpose of a seeded run. The seeded run should mean that if I go to this booster node, I know that these cards are going to exist here, right? So player shares a seed with me and says, hey, on this booster node, if you take the damage booster, you'll get a skeletal dragon, right? And I just go, oh, okay. So I make my way there, and boom, I get my skeletal dragon. If I modify the loot tables based on what the player build is currently, then that's basically not possible to do, right? So yeah, those are the concerns. Again, I'm open to changing anything. If the seeded run isn't adding that much to the game, it would be better to have dynamic loot tables. Then I'll just remove the sort of seeded run feature, or at least not surface it to the player. But anyway, that's a long-winded way of saying probably not going to do that stuff, but we'll see. Okay, so we need to track statistics. And before I get started, I'm actually just I need to step away for just 1 second, so I'll be right back. Okay, sorry about that. All right, let's start with the statistics. So, how do I want to do this? Let's start with... Let's go to the run manager here. We have this being done. We're tracking artifact manager on damage dealt. So probably want to track damage and whatnot. Where is that actually being done? Track damage dealt. So we have these damage entries in the turn history entry. So we're going to want to track the damage dealt. Going to need to probably hook into this in a different way. So basically what I want to have is like a run statistics manager. So maybe I'll do that right now. Run statistics manager. Like so, namespace, game.manager, public partial class, run statistics manager node. Let's make this a global class. So I'm going to want to hook into basically everything that I need to hook into here. All right, so public partial class. Okay. That's it. The whole system's done. In terms of balancing, what do you think about enemy cards' abilities that counter certain status effects like Extinguish, reduces incoming fire stacks by 2, or Antidote reduces incoming poison by 1, since poison is so strong? I have an idea for making poison less strong. So yeah, I think poison is a little bit strong. I'm thinking about slowing combat down a little bit, generally speaking. Not too much, but I think it's fun to create bursty builds. I just think it's a little bit too easy right now to get to that point. So one thing that I might do for poison and other status effects is I might just increase the amount of time it takes for them to proc. So right now poison procs every single turn, right? But I could do something like have poison proc only every 3 turns or every 4 turns or something like that. So there's a little bit of a delay between when you apply the poison and when it kicks in. So that could be good. The problem, I don't know. The problem with the enemy countering... So yes, I would like to have enemy builds that counter certain player builds. The problem is that it's really hard as a player to determine when you're going into a combat that will counter you. I would love for that to be part of the decision-making process, but the problem is right now it's too hard to determine when that's the case. And so it's too hard to determine when that's the case. And so I need to figure out a way to make that a lot clearer. Why is this not working? I need to figure out a way to make that a lot clearer, but I think there's a number of things I can do to make that clearer. I don't know. What's the difference between manager as nodes in main scene versus globals? So this run manager gets instantiated when you actually start the run. And so all of these managers here are owned by that run. And so when you exit the run, all of these things get freed. So yeah, the idea here is that these are not global, which means that when I quit a run and I want to re-enter a run, all these things get recreated, which means that all of these things will start with their default state. So I don't need to worry about like managing global state in between runs, which can be bug prone, especially if you forget to reset some state or you've got some old state hanging around from a previous run. So I just put everything that's only relevant to the run as a manager inside of that run, and then the life cycle of the game automatically cleans up this state and reinstantiates it and all that stuff. Welcome, Corkadilly, by the way. I don't know why this isn't working. I think I need to restart the editor. There we go, run statistics manager. So just put that there. Thanks noted also redos all my global managers. Yeah, I mean, the thing is, like, if it's working, then, you know, then there's no problem really with the global managers. I just find it like it's easier for me to manage my state when I am isolating everything to the run, basically. Okay, so the run statistics manager, I need to hook into this turn history entry. That's not good. I'm gonna have to redo this, I think. So the problem is these are pure C# classes, so they don't really have access to the scene tree. Track damage dealt, track status applied, damage dealt entry. So right now I'm kind of doing this in a weird way where I'm passing in some callbacks here for on ability execution tracks, on damage dealt tracks, so on and so forth. This is being used in the turn manager here. So when we process turns, it's creating a new turn context object, and then all of these cards are being executed here. but I'm passing in the combat log manager on ability execution tracked. So I mean, the easy way to do this is just to support a list of callbacks in here. So I might actually change this. Let's do private read-only list. Public delegate void ability execution tracked delegate. Okay, we're going to do ability execution tracked delegate. Ability execution subscribers. Damage dealt subscribers, status applied subscribers. Public void add ability execution subscriber. Public void add damage dealt subscriber, add status applied subscriber. We're going to get rid of these now in the constructor, like so. Okay, so track damage dealt. We want to do for each var subscriber and damage dealt subscribers. We're going to invoke that. For each var subscriber and status applied subscribers, invoke that. And then where was the last one? Track ability execution. I probably want to put this up here with everything else. Okay, so now I can support any number of things listening for those things happening. Now in the turn manager here, what I need to do is I need to do turn context dot current history dot add ability execution subscriber, add damage dealt subscriber, add status applied subscriber, and we can get rid of this. Okay, so that works there. Now, the other thing that I'm probably going to want to do is so the problem is this turn context does not extend anything Godot related, so I can't pass it in a signal. So I may just end up creating like a wrapper for this. Let's see. Where do I want to put that? Where's my turn context at? So turn context, turn history. Turn context created event, something like this. Namespace game dot data dot turn. So this is a nice little trick that you can use. So if you ever have a pure C# class or something that does not extend anything Godot related, does not extend Godot object, that means that you can't pass it as a signal argument. But the easy way around that is, well, you could either decide to go to your turn context and make this extend something like ref counted, and that will make sure that it's automatically cleaned up when it's no longer used. But this also makes it so that way you can pass it along as a signal argument. In this case, I don't want to do that. What I'm going to do instead is I'm going to create a turn context created event that extends ref counted. And then this will contain public required turn context get init. Turn context like so. So I'm just wrapping that with a class that is ref counted. And then what I could do is I can go to my game events and I can create a signal here. Public delegate void turn context created event handler. Turn context created event. Like so. And then we will emit public static void emit turn context created. Turn context created event. Turn context created event. Instance.emit signal. Okay, let's go to the turn manager now. Game events.emit turn context created. New turn context created event with the turn context in there. And then what I can do is I can go to my run statistics manager and I can do game events.instance.connect. Turn context created. Okay, so private void on turn context created. Turn context created event. Okay. Var turn history is equal to turn context created event dot turn context dot current history. Okay. Cool. So now I can hook into those turn stuff. So private void on status applied. Tracked. Private void on damage dealt tracked. Private void on ability execution tracked. Card abilities executed entry. Okay, so now we can do current history dot add subscribers. Okay, so now we're going to be listening for anything that happens during that turn. And now we can start actually tracking these. In our status. So we're going to need a statistics object here. Probably going to want to do scripts data, new folder, statistics. So we're going to want this run statistics here. We're going to want to segment the damage by type. Somehow I made it where in my game, the more you upgrade, the harder it gets, and yet it's still recommended upgrade. That's cool. Gotta go, thank you, I'm learning a lot. Here, you're so organized. Well, thank you, B. Thanks for joining, and hope to see you in the next one. Have a good day. Played your game yesterday, it was a lot of fun. Thank you, BYMB. It's very much appreciated, thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed it. And lots more improvements to come, but I'm glad that it's fun in its current state for sure. So the problem here that's a little bit wonky, we do have the damage type here. What I might do with this damage type is I may end up using this damage type. Do I want to use this damage type? So this is where we're going to get into a little bit of a problem. I mean, it's not really that big of a problem, but if I use these damage types directly as keys in a dictionary, so if I were to get, like if I were to do a public dictionary damage type to int total damage dealt by type, and then I were to just use that. Remember, this data ultimately needs to be persisted to the disk for the run. And so there's a risk that if I were to change, where is it? Damage type. If I were to change the order of these things, then that would break because like they would have different enum values. Now, one solution is just to remember that and not to change it, but I think that's a little bit brittle. So what I might do is I might actually do some kind of conversion to an ID so that like the run statistics will maintain its own version of like the damage type ID, and it will relate that to the enum value. And that makes it less brittle because it's more explicit in here that I need to have static IDs for each damage type, rather than relying implicitly on making sure that I don't reorder this at all, right? And I also don't want to just use like the string name here because I might change this to preserve if I wanted to be more consistent, and then that would break any existing data. The other nice thing about explicitly relating like a string ID to this is that it's more readable in the JSON. So if I'm debugging, I'll be able to read it better. And that opens up another pathway for like migrating save data. So let's say for whatever reason, I changed one of these damage types, or I removed one of these damage types, and I wanted to maybe merge two of them together or whatever. It would be easier to have a migration pathway from the old statistics model to the new one. So I think that's the way to go. So I'm probably going to want to do that. Will all cards be unlocked in the release version of the game, or players will have to do something, e.g. achievement, deal 1,000 poison damage to unlock fire cards and kill bosses? Yeah, the idea is that cards will be unlocked as you play the game for sure. So we're gonna, instead of doing like a meta progression system where you have to gain currency and then you use that to unlock permanent upgrades, it's all gonna be goal based. So if you want to unlock a certain card pack, then yeah, you'll have to deal like 1,000 poison damage or something. Hello, Defected. Welcome back. Good to see you. I saw you were having fun with Alchemortis in the Discord. So we're going to change this to a string, and then we're going to do public static string get damage type key. And then we're going to do switch damage type. Okay. And then we can do public void log damage dealt entry. I think that's what it's called. Okay. Okay, so we go to run statistics manager on damage dealt tracked. We need a run statistics object. So let's do private read only run statistics. Run statistics equals new. Run statistics.log damage dealt entry. Maybe we'll rename this to track damage dealt. Now I have to actually do... So we got total damage dealt. Maybe we'll want to do like a public dictionary total damage received by type. Something like that. So track damage dealt, and then we also need to do public void track damage received. So in here, we're going to need to do something interesting here. So I need to be able to know what the player board is in here. It's kind of in here, but the thing is, it's just to board and from board, so it's very generic. I'm thinking about just adding another flag in here that says is player board. That might be the way to do it. So maybe I'll just do this in here. Var is player board is equal to owner board get player board. And then we've got this damage dealt entry from board to board. And then we'll just do public required bool is player board. Well, actually, oh, that doesn't actually help me because this damage dealt entry happens for received and dealt damage. Well, I guess that can just be fixed with a minor language change. Public required to board is player board. Get init. Public bool. Public required bool from board is player board. Something like that, maybe? Var to board is player board, and var from board is player board. Damage.context.source.board. Oh no, this would be execution context.source.board. Wait a minute. Damage context. Where am I actually using the source board? Is that used? Do I have a bug in here? Should this all be execution context source board here? Let's look at my holy status. Oh, I might have something weird going on here. I don't know. I'm going to need to investigate this. To do, investigate whether these damage dealt entries should be using damage context.sourceboard or execution context. So that's an interesting thing. But anyway, from board is player board. Damage context.sourceboard is not equal to null. Is player board and damage context source board equals player board. Okay. Anyway. Just gonna have to figure out how this data is actually flowing through the system. Okay, anyway, back to our run statistics manager. If damage dealt entry dot from board is player board, track damage dealt. Else, if damage dealt entry to board is player board, track damage received. So we're differentiating between those things. And that should hopefully work. Yeah, I don't know this damage why is it using the source board here? Oh, source board can be null in here. There's something weird going on here. Execute, execution context. What is the target? Oh, the target board is tick statuses. Target board is equal to owner board. Source board equals status source board. To do this doesn't work with holy. Okay, so it looks like I've got some problems that I need to resolve here. Oops. Okay, well, that's right. I don't think this source board value is reliable because what this is doing is this is saying for every status, the person that was the source of the status is the opponent, but that doesn't work for shield or holy or shield. I'm gonna have to maybe redo how this all works, but that's okay. I should probably be unifying this stuff, but we could fix that later. Anyway, so I'm actually not sure that this is going to work. From board is player board, execution context.source board. So the problem is, yeah, I don't think this is going to work for fire statuses. Like if I were to put fire on the enemy, I don't think that this source board would be tracked properly. So I may need to change that. Anyway, trying to get some of these crazy one-shot builds, but I haven't quite got it yet. I wonder if we could get freeze, thaw, or decay, or damage over time, unlike paralysis, which would deal slow cooldown, not stop, and deal minor damage as well. Yeah, we could do like a slow cooldown thing for sure. Thaw out, which allows you to counter any enemy freeze somehow. Are you planning to add card rotation to the board? No, I'm not adding card rotation. Move the first deal from my comment mistype. Yeah, the strategy, it's also a little bit technically hard to do, and also my art is drawn in a certain orientation with certain lighting on it, so I don't think it's necessary for the game. I could see why like being able to rotate cards could add some strategic value, but I'm not going to do that. I mean, I guess it could be added in the future, but I think there's enough strategic depth right now without card rotation that it's not necessary. It's most likely a no-go as it does interfere with the placement strategies. Yeah, it could. I know some back-to-back battlers do that though, and those are fun too. Yeah, I mean, I think it fits in certain games. I don't think it's a requirement for these kinds of games. I think I can accomplish enough strategic depth, and the limit, I kind of like the limitation, right? I kind of like the idea of like, this card doesn't quite fit into my board, and you always have alchemy as a solution, right? So if you don't like the shape of a card, but you like its abilities, you can use alchemy to like take those abilities and put them on a different card that has a shape that's better for your layout, right? So I think it's fine. Sorry, I was away for a while. What are we working on? We're setting up the meta progression system, which I think there's actually quite a lot of problems here that I need to address. So I need to probably get this straightened out, but right now I'm just working on a way of globally tracking statistics, and then that can start being tied into the goal-oriented unlocks. Yeah, oops. Yeah, I like knowing the places and the shape and using alchemy to put them on a smaller card. Yeah. So I think it's okay, but we'll see. We'll see. If card rotation is definitely going to make the game better, then I'm always open to adding it. Anyway, I'm going to take a quick 3-minute break, and then when I come back, we will continue on with this. I think we're ready to start doing some testing to see if this works, but I think that something like fire is not going to work. So we're going to test that, but anyway, I'll be right back in just a few minutes. All right. Let's see what happens. In general, what I meant is that rotation would be useful in the inventory. I got you. Yeah. I'm not against it, but I also don't think it needs it. Yeah, that's kind of the position that I have too, but like I said, everything's subject to change. We're still in active development, so. All right, well, let's see what happens. Let's put a breakpoint here. Let's just start with something easy. Also, I'm gonna do this. Let's do training dummy, test player cards. We'll just get rid of all this stuff. Skeleton mage, that does fire. I'm mostly concerned about fire. I don't think that's going to be logged correctly. So I may need to think about doing a broader change to how all this data is being tracked so that it's nice and consistent. But let's see what happens. Oh, I didn't run with debug. By the time it ships, it's going to be about candy and cheeseburgers. Yeah. All right, let's see what happens. So this is going to, let's see. Okay. From board is player board, true. Yes, that's working because the fire status, target board is execution context, target board. Source board is null. I don't know why I have this source board then. Let's see, bleed. The damage context source board is where is the damage coming from? Which board is the damage coming from? So in this case, yeah, the damage is not coming from any board. It's just dealing damage as a result of the status. Probably poison is the same. Look at poison status. Yeah, source board is null. But then here, if I go back, from board is player board. So if I look at my status component, tick statuses, status.execute. So this tick statuses is being done. So I think this is the major problem. The source board is the opponent board. Which is not always going to be correct. So fire damage is being dealt. It's getting the source board here. That's going all into this tick statuses. It's ultimately ending up in the combat component, doing damage here. It's looking at the execution context. And it's saying the source board is the player board, execution context. Yeah. So I think that's cool. The damage context, the source board. So it's where is the damage coming from? If the source board and the damage context is null, that means it's not being applied directly by any board. Although, seems to me like it would be sensible to log that data properly. So the damage source board should probably ideally never be null, so I know like who was the initiator of that damage originally. So right now, if fire ticks on the enemy, even if it was applied by the player, it says that the damage source is null. So I could see that being a problem. But I guess for now it's probably okay. I should probably... Yeah. Investigate making damage context source always match whichever board ultimately initiated the damage, with the exception of necrotic. I think I need to do that. Anyway, I'm not trying to break the game hard enough. Am I the only one not experiencing bugs? I think a lot of the bugs are very situational. Like a lot of the bugs that I've fixed have been like they only come up with certain combinations of cards or whatever. So they're not, I mean, the game is perfectly playable. There's no like game-breaking bugs. Like the happy path, the normal play style works just fine. It's just that, you know, there were some bugs on Mac, there were some bugs on Linux that were platform dependent, and then most of the other bugs were just related to using specific cards together. Enjoy your work. I'm going to play Alchemortis. All right, sounds good. Thank you. Thank you. All right, so anyway, let's keep stepping through this. I'm pretty sure it's going to work, but... So from board is player board. We're going to do track damage dealt. We're going into here. The damage type key is fire. And then we're doing total damage dealt, fire 9. Is that accurate? Yeah. Okay. So that should work. The problem is... I don't think the training dummy has any damage. Let's go do ability builder.damage here. Okay. Oops. I forgot to do this again. Okay, so track damage dealt. We're gonna have to receive damage now. Okay, so if from board is player board, no. To board is player board, true. Track damage received, and that should be the same thing. Damage type key, physical. Okay. Cool. Alrighty. So we've got that basic setup in place. That will work. So yeah, the main thing now is just to figure out this damage context source. I think I need to get that. I need to get that all situated. And there was another to-do that I put on here somewhere. Yeah, so I think if I get the damage context source board all aligned properly, then I can use that instead of the execution context source board. But I think that's going to actually be relatively difficult. Anyway, initial Setup of run statistics. Yeah, I'm just not entirely sure how this is going to work when I call tick statuses here, because this is creating a brand new execution object and it's ticking the statuses on the board. So I'm making an assumption here that the statuses would always have been applied by the enemy board, but that's not the case in terms of like holy or shield. Like I bet you if I were to go apply shield, this would be wrong. And it just hasn't affected anything in the game yet, but that is definitely going to mess with me. Stepped away for a while. Are we still working on the stat tracking? Yeah, I think there's a big bug in my system here, which I need to figure out how to resolve, but I don't know how to do that at the moment anyway. Oh, this is ticking the statuses even when there's no status on the... Okay, that's going to be annoying. That's just going to take the status every turn, even if there's no statuses, which is fine, but I need to... The training dummy needs to have its turn cooldown turned up so that the first breakpoint is hit by the skull tower. So let's do that. Oh, handle is not initialized. Okay. I don't know what that is. I need to figure that out too. Anyway. Oh, it's still ticking. So the shield status actually doesn't have any execution in it. So that's why it's not breaking with respect to the source board being the opposite one. But I still need to, for the sake of data integrity, I need to fix that. I guess I could put a breakpoint here maybe. Does that work? I actually don't know if that's going to work. Let's see. So execution context, source board. Center position is 506, 180. Yeah, so that's the enemy board. So when the shield gets executed, even when it was applied by the player, it's saying the source board was the enemy. So that's not right at all. That's not right at all. So yeah, I'm going to need to figure out a way of more reliably determining which was the source of the status. And maybe that is something that I store on the status itself. So if I do base status, I could put the source board in here. Oh, that's not base status. Base status. So I could put the source board in here. The problem is I could potentially end up storing a reference to something that no longer exists. But I think that may be the only way to get around it. So I put a source board in there on the base status itself, and then I can use that in the damage execution. And then I can change this source board here to be whatever originally applied the fire. Although, shoot, that's going to be a problem. Like if I ever wanted to modify the status effects, oh, maybe that wouldn't be a problem. I was going to say, like, let's say that I have an effect that doubles the current fire stacks, right, on the enemy. So let's say that there's a negative alchemy ability that will double your current fire stacks when it applies. The source board in that case would... So if the enemy's applying fire to you, that's the source board is the enemy board, right? But then if I double the amount of fire on myself through like a negative alchemy ability, the question is, should the source board still be the enemy board or should it be the player board? Probably the player board. Because I think when I usually double things, I'm not actually changing... Or am I changing? The problem is if I just have one instance of the fire status and that's responsible for driving everything, then I may lose the data about like who originally applied the fire. So that's going to be a tricky thing to think about. I think that's the way my status component works. So my status component, if I apply a status, I'm looking for an existing status and then I'm just increasing the stacks. So if I apply fire to myself and the enemy applies fire to me, I don't have a way currently of tracking like where each application of fire came from. It may not be the case that I actually need to know that though. Because I am tracking a bunch of different things, right? So for example, I'm tracking fire damage dealt in here, but I'm also tracking fire applications separately, right? So if I go to my turn history entry, so damage is just one of the things that's tracked, but I am tracking statuses applied. And so if I ever wanted to track like how much fire was applied, I can do that separately and more reliably. The damage dealt is just whatever damage ends up happening against the board. So maybe that's okay. I don't know. We've got a lot to think about here, I think. Target board is the owner board. Do I need this source board when I'm going through a status context? I'm wondering if it would be cleaner to not have this damage work off of execution context and just use the damage context itself. I think that this is making things a little bit wonky. So I'm relying on this execution context, but really this execution context object is supposed to be for driving the card execution life cycles. And I think I'm getting confused by this because there are some pieces of data in this execution context that are like not applicable to individual instances of damage. And so I might want to investigate, like, because this is a different system. This execution context is doing too many things, and I think that's the main problem. It's got too many responsibilities, and so that's kind of confusing the issue. So I think what I need to do is I need to remove execution context as a requirement and use only damage context to then create a separate kind of execution context for status ticks specifically, like status execution context. So I think I just am not properly doing like a separation of concerns here. So this execution context is being passed around all over the place. And so it has a lot of data in it, but a lot of this data is going to be conditionally set based on like where this execution context is being created. And that's creating a lot of confusion. So what I'm going to do, I think as a next step, is I'm going to make damage context its own thing. And I'm going to put only the data relevant to tracking damage in there. And then I'm going to make a status tick context. So instead of using execution context here, I'll do a status tick context. And so that should hopefully clarify things by making each system its own thing with its own context. That should make it a lot more easy to reason about, and then I think that will work. Now the problem is, yeah, I think that's the way to do it. So I think that's probably the next step. I guess I do need the current history entry, but I can pass this along with the damage context, I think. And we have the turn context here. So yeah, I think there will be a lot of properties similar. I don't know. I'm gonna have to think about this. Damage context. Where is that at? Well, it's right here, I guess. Where is this actually being used, though? That's what I need to understand. So really the source board, yeah, this is a mess. Okay. I'm gonna have to just take a whole pass at this entire system and get that all straightened out. But anyway. Okay, well, anyway, I gotta get going. I've got somewhere to be very shortly, so I'm gonna go do that. But thank you all for watching. Thank you for being here. Sorry we got stuck at the end there, but I need to get that system working in a way that's very predictable if I'm gonna start building other systems on top of it. So I think it's going to be worthwhile to go through and just refactor things as necessary to make sure all the data is as crystal clear as possible. And then the meta progression system will be easier to build on top of that because I won't be confused as to all the conditionality that could possibly exist in the data. So we're going to make it very set in stone. We're going to make all the data required depending on what context it's in. And where there can be a difference in data or where there can be a conditional in data, we'll just make that a separate context object. So I know that when I get this context object, I don't have to do a bunch of checks to see like, well, is this the case and is that the case? And that's just going to be prone to bugs and errors. So we're going to lock that system down, hopefully in a way that makes sense. But otherwise, yeah, thanks for watching, everybody. Again, the Alchemortis playtest is live for everyone right now. So if you want to head over to the Steam page, you can try the game right now. And yeah, I would appreciate it. You can join the Discord and leave your feedback. You can support me on Patreon if you are so inclined. That would be much appreciated as well. I will not be streaming today again or tomorrow, so I'll be back at it Monday at 10 a.m. Eastern. Hope to see you there, and I hope you have a great weekend, and I'll talk to you later. All right, bye-bye.